Hey guys, what is up? AwesomeTheSauce here. Hope you guys are having a great day and welcome to the cursed tier list video 2021. Whenever I make one of these tier lists, I'm always wrong, but today I'm gonna be right. You know, I did a lot of PvP on every character, test realm and non-test realm, so I wanted to wait until I did a lot of PvP before I made a tier list on what I think is the best school, the worst school, the middle schools, all the schools. So yes, we're gonna be ranking the schools in max level PvP, but I want to do two disclaimers. One, this could change if there's a new strategy or something really good that comes out for a school. Your win rate is not, you know, tied to this tier list, unless you're Storm. And the second disclaimer that I do want to say is, unlike other tier lists, even despite the Storm joke, but unlike other previous tier lists, I actually don't think that it's easy to say that one school will always win or two schools will always dominate. I think what I'm trying to say is the schools are closer in terms of their capabilities in PvP than ever before. I think it's harder to make this video now than ever before. That's a good thing. Anyways, without further ado, let's get right into this tier list. Number 7 is definitely going to be Storm. Now, I will say this, alright? I think everyone expected this. I don't think everyone expected this for the same reason I'm going to cite in this tier list. I think one of the biggest changes that obviously affects how good Storm is the ban of Lightning Elf TCs in PvP. Now, this was a very easy way to break shields. It's not just a way to break current shields, it's a way to break future shields, and it's at a very low pip cost. Obviously, this was a very, very good spell for Storm. Now, it has gotten replaced by something that on average, 90% of the time, it'll hit twice out of the 3 times, if not more. Mostly reliable shield breaker. It comes with an element of chance that it'll screw you over. It's not that bad. I do think that it's not as good because it can't break future shields, but they do have some way to break more than one shield in a turn. They did not have that without Elf, so they did have some sort of replacement. So why is Storm at the bottom of this tier list? I actually don't think it's because of their shield breaking ability as much as it is because of their stats. Storm's HP has historically been very, very low, and the problem is that they do not get made up for it. There aren't stats that make up for it. The resist is very abysmal. Their damage, as high as it can get, is put through a damage resist limit thing function. Crit, even if they can get more crit than other schools, it leads to maybe a 1.1 to 1.15 multiplier depending on your opponent's block. It's not a game changer. And finally, I'd argue that the one stat that they do get more than other schools, which is Pierce, they seem to get more Pierce. Like, if you look at, you know, if you look at like the Mouster's Cowl, 7 Pierce on a hat, it is quite a bit. Even though they get more Pierce, I think this is the one thing that sets them apart, but just not enough to keep them competitive. What used to keep Storm in the game was the fact that the Shadow Gauge used to move faster. So you used to get a Shadow Pip every 3 turns. So you could actually do something like Rusalka and then, you know, pressure another Rusalka in a small amount of time. For better or for worse, now that the games are slower, a spell like Rusalka, if it gives you the weakness, not only are you not going to get another high pip, shadow pip spell, right? You're not going to get a high damage shadow pip spell for a while. Now, you're going to have to use a weaker spell with the weakness. Like, this is one of the worst shadow spells ever right now. And if you don't count their shadow spells, Storm has very little utility in their non-shadow hits. The best one that I can think of is Catch of the Day. It's actually a very weak spell, even though it does remove 2 positive buffs. So that being said, with the shadow gauge being lower, the fact that their shadow spell can literally give them a weakness, along with the fact that they're not going to get too many to make up for the weakness, the shadow pip thing is really the problem with Storm at the moment. It doesn't seem like they're going to like change how fast we get shadow pips, and honestly, it makes the other schools much more enjoyable in my opinion. I think one of the best solutions to make Storm more competitive is just to give them more HP. If they're not going to get more HP, then they need a lot more Pierce, a lot more damage, or a lot more crit to make up for it. And I just don't see that being as realistic as just giving them some HP to keep them competitive. I don't think that's actually that bad of an idea, considering Myth and Fire have tons more HP, and they actually have a lot more offensive capabilities as well. Now, I will say this, out of all the schools that could be number 6, I think Death is kind of a surprise entry. I don't think Death is a bad school at all. I think it's a very, very good school. You can win against any matchup right now, and this is part of the disclaimer I'm talking about. I think once you put Storm at the bottom, any school can actually be pretty damn good. But the reason that I put Death at number 6 is because the thing that really defines their school identity is drains. And the problem is their Shadow Pip drain is an AoE, so that makes it just so much weaker than it could be. Even Scarecrow's a very good drain for its pips, but again, it's an AoE, so it takes a pretty big damage hit anyways. One of their best hits regardless of all of this isn't a drain, but it's winged. Again, it takes a pretty massive hit because the Plague is an AoE. Snack attack, right? That little pushing a weakness thing is incredible, but the damage is low because it's an AoE. So it's not that Death's tools are bad. It's not, it's really not, it's not a big reason why Death is bad. I think they've just gotten the short end of the stick on their most offensive tools. The best offensive tool that Death has is Scion. And the reason it's good is because finally, it's not an AoE, right? So it's a very good drain. It plays off their school identity of draining, but it doesn't take a damage hit because of some sort of AoE component. Honestly, I think Death is really good with Virulent Plague, Empower, Beguile, Dark Pact. They have a lot of really good tools. So again, by no means is Death bad. I just think that a lot of their offensive capabilities are shut down by the fact that their shadow spells all have some sort of like attack on everyone, attack on area of effect, basically, you know, AoE. It has that component that makes it weaker for its pips. Number 5 is a tie with number 4. I'm gonna say that Fire is both number 4 and number 5. I'm gonna call this next little bit of the tier list, it's gonna be a tie. We'll talk about number 4 after this. I think Fire is really, really good right now. It's very, very balanced, in my opinion. Honestly, this damage limit that they did, it makes you do strategies where you could actually afford to just have lower damage. And because you can afford to have lower damage, you can afford to have a higher resist, and it makes Fire really, really interesting. The reason why I think Fire is just way better than Storm and Death is simply just because of a free. It's just a very, very good utility. They also have a hit and stun that's a single hit, which gives them a lot of offensive pressure. Dragon is still extremely powerful, and their shadow hits are still extremely powerful. The thing that really sets something like S'mores and FFA apart is that there's no chance that it can backfire on you with a weakness like Storm. So this, in my opinion, is the best shadow spell, just for damage anyways. Fire's a really good school right now. It's tied for 4th, so keep that in mind. It's not number 5, it's 4 and 5. I'm gonna say the Myth ties with Fire. I think it's in a very, very good place right now. And again, the reason is just like Fire has a lot of good utilities like Ifrit, like Nautilus, like all these overtimes that are really good. Myth also comes with a lot of good utilities. You have a hit and confuse, you got Earthquake, which removes all buffs, you have 2 different hits that pierce before they hit, and of course you have a hit and minion. Not to mention the fact that you can play around with stuns and shift. I honestly think that Myth has a tool for literally every situation. And I think that's part of why they actually are slightly lower on this list. I think the unfortunate truth about having something for every situation is that it kind of holds you back a little bit. Sometimes you're going to be holding on to an Earthquake because you're scared of a Blade Stacker, but really you should be holding on to a Shift, because if they Blade Stack into an overtime, you just win when you shift. Sometimes you're holding on to a Medusa because you want to pull out that nasty combo, but in reality, you're only ready to pull it when you have enough pips and your opponent has a stun block and they're just waiting to put a stun block on to punish you for holding on to the Medusa. And I think this idea of picking the wrong utility or keeping the wrong utility in your hand wouldn't be as much of a problem if Myth had more HP or more resist or this or that. They have a little bit less tankability in general, so they're slightly less suited for a slower matchup where they can afford to, you know, hold on to things for a long time in their hand. So yeah, Myth is in a great place, including niche strategies like the Daybreak or Shatter strategy. You're looking at very consistent ways to rank up on a Myth. So let's move on to numero 3. Number 3. Sauce, why the hell is Ice this up on the list? You suck. I'll be honest, I honestly didn't think that Ice would actually be good in this meta. I thought it would be just as bad as Storm. Now, the reason I say that it could have been just as bad as Storm is because Storm and Ice are the only schools that don't have a hit and bubble. So you would think that Storm's inability to bubble would just be like Ice's inability to bubble. It's just not true. Unlike Storm, you could just overtime into a bubble the second your opponent shields because they're scared of a follow-up hit. So yes, you don't have a hit and bubble, but if you have a deck that gives many copies and you carry 10 bubbles, you're basically set for bubble control for the game. It's just not the same as Storm. It's just, there's no other way to say it. The overtime makes the bubble on an Ice just better. I'm telling you right now, if you run Pip Conserve with a 1-pip Steel Ward, you're looking at a massive, massive tempo changer. If someone shields and you steal their shield and then you also conserve a Pip, you gain so much on them. I'm telling you, this is a wave. I know this seems like a very small thing. This is a huge, making this 1-pip is a huge buff for Ice, in my opinion. Not to mention the fact that they also can steal and hit now, which they never were able to do, and they still have a hit that adds a universal shield. I think Ice has just as much utility as Fire and Myth, but the thing that really sets them up is just their health and their resist, right? I mean, that's kind of what breaks the tie. If not for their health or their resist, I'd put them right around where Myth and Fire is. But they have very, very good utility. I think this is a very good utility. And they have the tank ability to boot. Here's where it gets interesting. I think Balance is number 2 on the tier list. And I say this because of one spell. Just like Steel Ward makes Ice extremely good, Mana Burn makes Balance really, really good. And it's not because of the damage of this. It's just because literally you can pack many copies of it with the Darkmoor deck, which now is very valid, right? A lot of people pack this now. This is just a part of the meta now, right? And not only could you do that, if you run Pip Conserve, you're looking at a way to control the tempo very, very easily. Balance is also one of the few schools that can actually play around a Daybreaker Shatter strategy, which Myth is very good at doing. There's a lot of niche little ways that I feel like Balance is good. I just think Balance is just good at addressing a wide variety of strategies, especially if you pack Infections for healing. I'd say they can easily counter Storm with King Art because they have a Hidden Blade that also weaknesses, so Scion is not an issue. They can mana burn high pip strategies, so schools like Death, schools like Ice, schools like Myth, they all struggle against mana burn. And they can Aegis their shields for Elemental and Spirit, so that schools that trap stack also do much, much worse. This is really surprising that Balance is so high on the list, because there's no one thing that just makes them so outrageously OP that, like, they need to be nerfed. I really don't believe that Balance needs to be nerfed. I just think that in a meta where it's very slow, where people are given the time to make smart choices, you can easily control the way the match goes on a Balance. And again, their health, their resist, it's still very, very high, so they still have very good tank ability. Just like one of the reasons why Ice was put so high up, they still have that element to them. So they have very good tools. Arguably better than every other school, in my opinion, other than, I guess, the top one. Finally, Life. Life is clearly at the top of this meta. I don't even think it's a point of debate, in my opinion. I honestly, the only reason Balance isn't top is because Life exists. This is crazy, because I'm pretty sure in my last tier list, I put Life, I think, bottom 2, bottom 3 at best. There's many reasons for this. Let's talk about them. The Daredevil rings are not the best. You could argue that Dragoon rings are better because, you know, if you're not getting Pierce from your Daredevil ring, you know, maybe Dragoon rings are better, so you can do a 5-piece healing strat with Dragoon, and that's very good. Also, if you just have the Darkmoor ring like I do, right? The healing is really, really good. Basically, without the duelist rings, now you can actually use rings that give good healing, so that makes Life naturally better because they can heal. The Shads slowing down, the Shad gauge slowing down, naturally helps schools that can recover from Shads the best. So now, it's actually very viable to heal from a Shadow hit if you can kill them before the timer, right? Like, if you're Satyr spamming, but the timer runs you out, you're not gonna win. But if you have the ability to change the tempo with some moves here and there, like a hidden bubble, or maybe a hidden shield even, if you can do something here and there on a Life, you can actually viably heal. So that's a very good thing for a healing school. And finally, this is the biggest reason I think they dominate, is because they have 2 2-pip bubbles that can help them. So yes, you could argue that Doom and Gloom exists, but it's just not the same as a Sanctuary, because a Sanctuary literally helps you. A Doom and Gloom doesn't help you as a death. So you could literally have a deck that gives 10 copies and just pack an insane number of bubbles and always get bubble control. It's very hard to lose bubble control unless you get reshuffled on. And Balance is the only school that can really do that. So yeah, y'all, that's my tier list. I think this is a pretty solid tier list. Obviously, I kind of copped out with the tie in the middle, but I really don't know what's better. I think other than that, I'm pretty confident in this tier list. But I want to hear y'all's opinions. Do you guys think I ranked any schools too high? Any schools too low? Let me know in the comments. As always, drop a like if you enjoyed. Leave a sub if you're new. There's tons of links in the description, including my Twitch, my Twitter, my Discord, my Instagram, and of course, my Patreon. And as always, if somebody hasn't told you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. So stay awesome. And yeah, y'all.